Welcome to the Chronically Awesome podcast with me, Katie Rose, recording my thoughts and realisations about the mind, the body, and all things woo-woo, looking at life through the lens of spirituality, and sharing things I believe should be taught to everyone so we can begin to heal the next generations, healing traumas, transcending the ego, and living an empowered, soul-led life of pure awesomeness.
Welcome, my lovelies. So you will probably hear that I sound like I'm full of a cold. That is because I am. I have had 2 colds / flu type things in the last month. So since I have recorded the last podcast, it has been feeling like it's literally one thing after another, because it wasn't just like a cold and things. There was a couple of other things coming up as well. So it was like a really big sort of shift. It was like things being kind of peeled away or cleansed away, or kind of, it's like somebody basically just took hold of me, shook me, and then was like, "Oh, let's see what comes out." That's how it felt, literally. So what I did was I took time off of work. I took a pause on my business for pretty much the entire month. And luckily I am able to do that because I also have a part-time job. And financially, I was able to take a break from my business because I knew I had the security and safety there. So my needs were being met for me to recognize and realize kind of where I wanted to go with my business, what it is that I really wanted, because so much has been changing in the last year, but also very much in the last couple of months. And we do need to stop and kind of adjust and recognize when these things are happening, because otherwise we are trying to make something happen on old beliefs or old programming or old ideas that are no longer matching up with that energy. And I'm sure I've said it before, but we are energetic beings. We are constantly flowing and moving, and it never stops. You never stop. You never stop evolving and growing. It's just whether we choose to see that and work with it, or do we kind of fight against it, like going against the tide and just feel like we're not getting anywhere. And I needed that month to figure out what I wanted, how I wanted to progress in my business, who I wanted to really focus on and help, and how I was going to do that. And I really thought I had this figured out recently. And then it was almost like another layer. But it wasn't necessarily another layer being kind of revealed or taken away. It was that it's a part of something that has been a part of me forever, it feels like. But it has been a part that maybe I had a fear around really acknowledging and addressing. And again, that sort of feeling of, am I good enough? Am I worthy enough to be able to show up and say, I am here to help chronic illness people. I am here to help people who are suffering for a long period of time with something that feels like that's it, that's there forever. And I've always known I've wanted to help people with chronic illnesses, but it's always been another thing that I try and avoid, because again, this element of not feeling good enough, but also because I've realized that it's not that it means I have to, but it means that I want to really share my story, because I am somebody that is open, that is honest, that does share probably way too much. But it means that I have to recall past things that maybe I wasn't able to, or I wasn't equipped to do before. Whereas after the last year, I've done a lot of healing around this. I have addressed a lot of the emotions that I was avoiding entirely. But there's also a lot of things that were connected with it that I did find not hard to talk about, but hard in the way of a fear of what others may think. And I started a book last year. I started writing it. I did about 10,000 words, and it kind of triggered me, and it was just put on pause then, because I had to deal with some things and process some things and heal through a couple of things. And also there was some hard conversations that I had to have with my mum as I talked about what I wanted to write and put in, and there were things that I hadn't told her that I had to let her know because it's going to be in the book. So that was hard. And then so that spark kind of went, it just kind of disappeared. And then through the month of February, as I took this break, that spark reappeared. And that spark, I realized, had never actually disappeared. It was just masked by the fear of what may come out of the end product of a book. Am I ready to put that out there? Am I ready to let people know all that I felt and experienced and went through? And in all honesty, it wasn't necessarily that. It was more the fear of what my dad will think and what he will think of me, because there is a big element that is tied in there. And that has always been my biggest thing. And it's a form of protection that I want to protect him, protect his feelings. I don't want to hurt him. But when I really sat with it, what I realized was it's not about him. It's not about what he did or what wasn't done. It's all about me. It's all about me. It's about how I felt and how I experienced that and my beliefs in those moments. It's not a reflection. It's not supposed to be a reflection on him as a person, because I love my dad. I get on really well with my dad now. But there was a time and a moment where I didn't. And it was because of those experiences, because of what I experienced with their divorce and how invisible I felt back then, is why that was the causing element that then led to me having a chronic illness, because I felt invisible. And the way that the mind works is to prove yourself right. So my body then went on to produce a chronic illness, which is also sometimes known as an invisible illness, especially with like chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, fibromyalgia. It is seen as an invisible illness. And when I started to learn about the mind and our belief systems and how we're like sort of conditioned into things and we take things on even though they're not ours, I could fully see and recognize exactly how this illness came to be, because the emotions that I went through were never recognized and they were never addressed and they were never spoken about. So I held on to every single emotion that there was back then, and I internalized it to the end of the world and back. The most you could internalize anything, I did that. And then so that's trauma within the body, and then that comes out in physical symptoms. It is stored within the body. It doesn't go anywhere. It's energy. We are energetic beings. We are flowing all the time with energy, and it's always changing. However, when a lot of trauma happens, it's like something gets stuck within the body, and that free flowing energy is no longer flowing the way it used to. And it starts to build up when trauma is not processed properly, and it just gets stuck there. So energy gets more and more stagnant, and we tend to go through more and more traumas as we grow older anyway. Just in general, they don't have to be really big ones, they could be smaller ones, but even like relationships and the way that somebody treated you in a relationship, like you can go into many different ways, but all that builds up until eventually there's nowhere for the energy to be flowing, and it starts to be produced as a symptom of some kind. And that's how chronic illness comes about. Is, in my belief, it is emotions that are just repressed, that were never addressed, that because you weren't equipped to deal with it. You didn't know how to process those emotions because you weren't taught how to do it. You weren't taught that emotions get trapped. You weren't taught that the mind works in a certain way to create a program that then protects you. But then it doesn't uninstall that program. It just keeps on running that program over and over again until you decide to change it, until you decide for something different, until you know that that's even happening and recognize it and be able to build an awareness around it to create new neural pathways, and produce a different outcome and a different behavior and a different action, which can change your symptoms to maybe not experiencing the symptoms anymore, to lessening the symptoms. Everyone is different, and it depends on how much you kind of have to work through and how much there is to deal with. So that's where I'm at. And I wasn't sure if starting the book again was even going to kind of go anywhere or do anything with it. But in the first week, I wrote 10,500 words. And I was like, I think this is very much needed right now to be put out there, to be an actual thing, to be able to move through the emotions that I'm feeling. And it's not so much the emotions that I'm feeling anymore. It's about helping others. Like, I feel like I'm finally at that point where I have fully understood the actions of those around me at that time. I understand that they were in survival mode. I understand that their actions came from their own sort of traumas. I understand how everything has come to be now. So I don't hold that anger and resentment and pure sort of confusion that I had as a child towards them anymore, because I understand how the mind works and how that situation may have been created, and how it was to do with the ego just trying to prove itself in whatever belief system that person had at that time or grew up with, was conditioned into them, because that's essentially what it is. Our parents are just another sort of projection of their parents in some way or another. They are what they were taught. They are the beliefs that they were programmed and conditioned into, and their lives have been a projection of that ever since. And I fully understand and recognize that now, to be able to hold them in compassion and say, it's okay. It's okay that you fucked up. It's okay that this happened. It's okay that I felt neglected, emotionally neglected. And even though that doesn't mean it's right what happened, it just means I understand how it happened. And it also allows me to be thankful, because I wouldn't be the person I am now if I hadn't been through that. I wouldn't be able to help other people with chronic illnesses if I hadn't been through that. So I do have this gratitude and appreciation for my traumas, because I think we see trauma as this terrible thing that we have to heal and have to get through, and we are who we are because of them. And we absolutely are who we are because of them, but it doesn't mean it has to be a projection of the rest of our life. We don't have to have that illness forever, because I truly, and this is going to be triggering for some people with chronic illness to hear me say, like, you don't have to have this illness forever, because I was that person that I would have probably turned this off at that point and gone, fuck off. How dare you? Like, this isn't something I've made up. And I'm not saying you have made it up in the slightest. It is very real. Absolutely. 110%. It is real. But it also comes from programming that has been created at some point as a form of protection, as a form of survival. And that's all we are. We are just like a massive fucking bunch of survival mechanisms and strategies. And that is how our life has been created. Our personalities have been created. My humor was my coping strategy, and it did not serve. It masked every single emotion that I ever had, because I wasn't able, and I was nowhere near equipped to deal with the actual emotions that were going on underneath the humor. There's just no way I could have faced it, addressed it, and moved on from it. I literally wouldn't be here if I didn't have the humor that masked it all. So if you're feeling triggered by this, and that is absolutely okay. If you want to scream and shout at me, that is absolutely okay, because that is where you are. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I just ask you to have the curiosity and maybe allow yourself to open your mind to the possibility that there could be more out there for you. And maybe you're not ready to accept that you could have your entire life back, but maybe you're ready to accept that you could have maybe a little bit more energy or a little bit less pain. And how amazing would that be if you allowed yourself to believe that for a moment, and then to follow through with that, and to put the actions in to be able to slowly get yourself there? Because it wasn't a quick thing for me. It's taken me years. It's taken me 7 years to get to this point. And those 7 years I've now taken, and I have putting into a book, so that you don't have to spend maybe as much time as I did to get to this point, that I could give you the tools and techniques that I use to maybe make it a quicker process for you. And that is why I am back here writing writing the book, and I'm really like every day I am writing. I haven't today so far. I needed a bit of a break, but every day I'm writing about 1,000 words, and I'm just getting it down. I'm just getting it out. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be pretty right now. And that's a reminder I have to tell myself over and over again, because I can get into perfectionist mindset and feel like it is all a load of shit and want to just control, alt, delete it all. So the way that this is connecting into the March energy is that March is resonating as a 1 in numerology. The 1 is like this leadership energy. It's independent. It brings a lot of courage. It's connected to the color red. It is like a fire, a passion. It is really looking after and focusing on your health and your well-being as well. It's got a lot of drive behind it. And this is March for us. This is the energy that you can be working with. And it is about new beginnings. And this is what I love. New beginnings, new projects, being innovative, being creative. And that is the energy that we are currently in and working with. And I think it's important to be able to say, yeah, I am worth this. I am worth showing up for myself. I am worth this courage. I am worth having this confidence, because this is going to lead me to something bigger and better. What I put in this month while working with this energy is going to serve me in the long run. So, and I love that. And it's about choosing yourself, because that's essentially what I feel like I've been doing. I choose me. I choose that my experiences and my beliefs are enough. And the reason I say this is because I get stuck. I get stuck in, I'm not good enough and no one wants to hear my story. What happens if my experiences hurt somebody else? But that's not what it comes down to. Is it doesn't matter, which sounds so horrible, but it doesn't matter in the way that it's my experience. It doesn't mean my experience is any less because somebody else who went through either the same, or like if we take my mum and dad, their experiences are completely different to mine. The way they remember it is completely different to mine. The way that they see it and remember it is going to be entirely different. The way they felt they dealt with it is going to be entirely different. And there is nothing wrong with that. That's their truth. And that's not wrong. And I say this because you need to remember that your own experiences are not wrong, even when somebody says, oh, you're just being over dramatic. I know if it's a sibling who's been through the same, oh, I never felt that. I never saw it as that. Well, that's because your belief system is different. That's because of what you have been through is different. That's because your feelings in certain moments and experiences are different to what I have been through. And this is why we see the world so differently to each other, and why we see the same event so differently from each other, because we have different things going on internally in the way that we receive information and process that information and filter it. And that then leaves you with an entirely different perspective and reaction to a situation than somebody else. And I just wanted to share that today because it was hard for me to get here. It was really hard. It's taken a lot of courage for me to speak some of this today as well. Like I literally felt it as I was saying some words or saying some things, because it is the first time that I've really said it out loud and allowed myself to really feel it, and to also then be ready for it to come out in the book. And I think like it's nothing that dramatic either. In like there was no big trauma, like a gasping, like, oh my God, I can't believe it. It's a very sort of just an inability to recognize emotions and deal with situations in a way where you can be seen and can be heard and have your emotions recognized and addressed and validated, and be able to process it and move through it to then come out the other side of it. And we're not taught how to do that. We have not been taught how the impact of our emotions and how our mind processes things can cause such dramatic, life-changing experiences and events and effects on your mind, your body, and your spirit. And this is something that I really want to kind of open up a conversation about. And not that I want to trigger you, but like, I want you to get curious. I want you to go, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if this is connected to that. And a majority of the people that I know with chronic illnesses know the emotional event that was attached to what caused the very first sort of symptoms that they experienced. Everyone I've worked with has always been able to pinpoint that emotional event that happened, that trauma that happened, that was not addressed or recognized in an appropriate way that could then be worked through and healed. So instead, it got blocked, and it got blocked into the body. And when the energy gets blocked in the body, it comes out in a different way because we're not addressing the first thoughts and feelings that are happening because we don't know how to do that. So then it comes out in a physical thing because we know how to deal with a physical thing. We know how to adjust our lives around it. We don't know how we do it half the time, but we do it regardless. And that is the last resort, is when you get that physical symptom. So when you have the physical symptom, we start to work backwards. That's the way you want to start looking at things of, right, this happened, but what happened before this? What emotion led to this? What trauma happened that I can connect the dots to? When did I experience this in childhood? Who made me feel this way? It's a bit like connect the dots, isn't it? Like, it's just you go from one to the other and you just get curious about it. And to start with, you don't even have to do anything with it. You can just recognize it, have an awareness of it, interesting, I'll dig into that another day a bit deeper. You don't have to do anything other than maybe have a bit of curiosity right now. So moving through May, I hope that you do focus on your health and your well-being, and that you do make any sort of lifestyle changes that you need to be able to look after yourself and put yourself first, because you deserve to be put first. You deserve to have time for yourself, to heal, to process, to just relax, because those with chronic illnesses, we're in this sort of constant space of fight or flight. Our nervous system is almost shot to pieces, I find, from those that I have worked with and my own experiences, because we have forgotten how to relax. We have forgotten that is a very important part to recovery. But for some reason, there's a protective part of ourselves that feels unsafe. And if your safety is feeling threatened unconsciously, you're not aware of it half the time. But if you're not feeling like you are safe and you have the security and your needs aren't being met, then you are going to constantly feel like you need to run, that you need to be prepared for survival. And that is a constant state that you become fixated in. So it's important to allow yourself time to say, I need an hour to meditate. I need an hour to go outside, go for a walk. I need an hour just to drive around just for me. I need an hour in Netflix and get lost for a while. That is so important, to set those boundaries for yourself and to not negotiate on them, to say how important that is for you, because you need to find your space to switch that nervous system back into the parasympathetic nervous system, the one that is rest and digest. And don't even get me started on the digest side of things and how much is connected to the gut and our nutrition and things like that. But that is like a whole other topic again, really, let's be honest. And that's the thing. There's so many elements to a chronic illness. There are so many elements to us not being okay, not being in alignment. And there are so many things that you can look into and look at. And, and I think you should follow what feels right to you and what you feel called to, because it will lead you down a path that will then lead you onto something else probably. And there's something else, there's something else. And this is how the journey starts. And this is how you begin to reclaim your life and reclaim your truth and start to have what you desire and what you deserve. So your affirmation for this month is, I choose me. And anytime you feel like you're not choosing yourself, take a moment to question why you're not choosing yourself. Because there will be some programming, there will be some people pleasing, there will be a whole lot of stuff underneath that. But just start getting curious and asking a simple question of, why am I not choosing myself in this moment when I want to? And just have a look and get curious about what comes up. So I hope that you have enjoyed this podcast. It was something I felt like I needed to say and get out, but also connect it with the energies of this month, so you know what energy is kind of being called in for you as well this month, so that you can then go on and work with it in the way that feels right for you, that you feel called to do. And I will see you again soon, my loves.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I have. If you did, please share on social media, or if you'd like to share your thoughts with me directly, then you can message me at HopeLightUK on Instagram. And if you haven't done so already, hit the follow button to follow the podcast for more awesomeness, and I'll see you here next time.